Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Hormone Genius podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Jamie, and today we are going to be talking about hormone superpowers and the genius of women's body and how it relates to the beautiful ebbs and flows of the cycle and how we can be empowered to know our hormones, but also to use them to our advantage. And just to be aware when they're not at our advantage as well, because sometimes our hormones don't make us feel great, but sometimes they do. And Jamie loves this stuff. So I'm going to be asking her questions today about what she knows about the incredible, beautiful genius of our hormone superpowers. So Jamie, I know we've kind of divided this up into a couple, obviously, phases of our hormones in the cycle. So where do we start?
Let's start with the estrogen genius. But first, what I want to do is provide context to why I think this is important. So just like Teresa said, we notice tendencies about ourselves throughout the course of the month. And sometimes we just experience something like maybe we feel really nitpicky toward our husband. Maybe towels on the floor bother us more during certain times of the month, or a disorganized closet make us so angry. And other times we don't really care that much. Or perhaps there are times during your cycle where you're like, holy moly, my husband is moving that furniture and he's getting kind of sweaty. He is so attractive to me right now. Whatever the case may be, there's just these ebbs and flows. And so as our hormones shift and our skills and our abilities and our tendencies shift as well. So this whole idea of hormones fascinating to me, not only as it applies to our fertility, although there is a alignment in regards to our fertility and then also our abilities. They play into each other, and I'll explain that. But just how we can leverage, like Teresa said, how we can leverage what we know about ourselves to socialize with others, to get rest, and even to be super creative, to leverage those moments and to get things done. And so I'm really excited. So I'm going to break this into two different chunks. I'm going to talk about the estrogen genius. I'm going to talk about the progesterone genius to make things simple. So that's how I'm going to get started. So
Awesome.
I'm just going to.
Well, and I just want to say, what's so cool about this is that people are getting, from a modern standpoint, involved in this. And I saw this, I don't know if anybody saw this on the news, but the World Cup, the American female soccer team. I'm like, what do I call them right now?
Yeah.
They all chart their cycles, and then they basically make their eating, their diet, their training patterns all related to where they are in their cycle. And so, and I even got and used the app for a while. It's like, you're at this stage of your cycle, so you should be eating this and this many calories, and you should be working out this hard. And I was like, what? They're totally doing fertility tracking and to some degree, I mean, they don't got it all right, but they were using this information. So super cool. So cool. Good job, women's soccer team.
Oh, good job, women's soccer team. And I think it was a male coach too.
Yeah,
how intuitive
totally,
is that? Big time intuitive, because during certain times of the month you're more prone to injury. So that's also a reason he had his soccer players chart. How smart is that? Because we sync together when we're around each other. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick snapshot of the fertility cycle. If you want more on this, we're going to really dig in future episodes, but check out Overview of the Fertility Cycle, episode 6, I believe. I'm just going to give you a quick refresher, because if you don't have that, none of what I'm going to say will make sense. So at the very beginning of your cycle, it's day 1 of your period, it's day 1 of your cycle. Okay. And so as you menstruate, you're shedding the uterine lining from the cycle before. You did not get pregnant. You're shedding the lining, and your body wants to start over. Okay. And the goal of every cycle is that moment of ovulation. So your body prepares for it. And then your body also even adjusts if conception and pregnancy occur. So day 1 of your period, you progress throughout the cycle. The follicle that houses the egg develops, and it produces a hormone called estrogen. And it's so important. And I'm going to talk about the estrogen genius in just a minute. So as the follicle gets bigger and as a woman nears ovulation, a woman starts to notice more and more and more and more estrogen. After the woman ovulates, then that follicle becomes the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum produces progesterone, and then progesterone is the dominant hormone following ovulation. You don't need to remember words like follicle or corpus luteum. you don't need to remember that if you don't want to. Just remember estrogen is the dominant hormone before ovulation. Progesterone is the dominant hormone after ovulation. That's the only two things I really need you to remember for this episode. Okay. So I'm just going to dig right in. So now that we know that, when we experience our period, obviously there are going to be times, and depending on the woman and depending on underlying factors, the period may be just this terrible, painful time. And if that's the case, I urge you to get care from a fertility care practitioner, a nat pro doctor, or somebody who is in line with this hormone genius way of thinking. But typically, if a woman is a healthy cycling woman, this moment of her cycle should be really quiet. So her estrogen and progesterone levels are like at an all-time low. And what women tend to notice about themselves if they stop and just are really in touch is things are quiet. Their mind is quiet. Their heart, they might not be worried so much about things. They might not be as anxious as they normally are during their period. And what I love about this time of your cycle is that it's a really beautiful time to journal and to pray. And to ask God and to ask others and to get the sense of direction for your life. If you're always seeking, what's my purpose? What's my will? That quiet with the progesterone, estrogen, it just creates the stillness in you. So really leverage that time to journal. I love oils. You see oils behind me. So I'm really using like rose and frankincense, and I'm really creating this like environment for that. So as the woman progresses through her cycle, she gets through with menses, her estrogen starts to increase. So the reason I call the first half the estrogen genius phase is because, again, estrogen is the dominant hormone, but estrogen doesn't start off dominant. Like I said, it's pretty quiet at the beginning, and it raises like a bell curve, like a ski slope, like you're going up, 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 up. But as you're going up and as estrogen increases in the body, think of estrogen like Q, Teresa, Q Jamie, coffee. Like we just actually have tea in this cup. But think of it as coffee. The more estrogen you have, the more energy you have, the more alive you feel. Kind of like with each cup of coffee, you feel a little more energized. So as you approach ovulation, it's like you're drinking another cup, an extra cup each day. And so, normally when we think about our hormones, we think, oh, hormones, like it's an 8-letter, 4-letter word.
Yeah. That's funny.
But estrogen, I think people kind of curse estrogen too. They think it's like this terrible hormone. But honestly, you guys, estrogen is amazing. Estrogen is the feminine superpower hormone of the century.
Yeah.
And we don't want to dial that down, and we don't want to cover that up. We want our true blue estrogen. Teresa, what are your thoughts right this very minute before I move on? Because I can tell you're thinking something.
I know. I'm actually like, this is so silly, but I'm thinking of like Instagram. And I'm thinking about when women are on Instagram. And by the way, being that I'm 45 and I didn't grow up in Instagram, but I'm like, those women, their all hair is so beautiful and they like look so perfect in those pictures always. And they're always standing like on a mountain behind them. And I'm always like, whoa, these women are so beautiful. And they're presenting themselves so beautiful. And I think about estrogen.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, like, again, it's the time of the cycle when estrogen is highest where I'm like, I think I actually have pretty decent skin. Maybe I'm not going to get wrinkles and get old. I think my hair actually looks really good today. Everything about your body responds to estrogen as a woman. It is the beautifying hormone that we have. And it's when you're going to feel most confident, most attractive, and you actually are attracting, the opposite sex at that time, because estrogen creates even like a pheromone onto your skin. It's like a chemical. Everything that is a hormone in our body to some degree secretes, out of our pores, you could say. Yep. And so this is when you are attractive and confident and beautiful, and you will feel that. And so this is where women put your stake in the ground and like be Joan of Arc and change the world. Like this is when you can, use your superpowers to do whatever it is you want to do. But it's a great and beautiful time for sure.
Amazing. It's amazing. So as like Teresa said, as we're approaching that ovulation time, we become more creative. We become more magnetic and attractive to others. We have the ability to speak well. And we have also the ability, estrogen interacts with our brain and it tells our brain to bump up the empathy. So as estrogen increases, we can connect more with others. So during that time of estrogen, and again, a little like estrogen genius hack, if you notice cervical mucus mid-cycle, that means you have estrogen, it's increasing in your body. So during that time, go out and be around others. Like Teresa said, during the estrogen time, it's like this nature's way of wanting to like populate the earth. So again, you're attracted to the opposite sex is attracted to you. And like for me, and in our marriage, my husband, like I said, if he's like sweaty or he's kind of like has a 5 o'clock shadow, I'm going to be really attracted to him because to me that's very masculine during my estrogen genius phase, because my body wants to reproduce and so does his. So it's like a chemical dance, literally. Our chemical dance. His testosterone increases as my estrogen increases. Our hormones literally are dancing with each other. So I love the chemical dance idea. I think that's
I mean, and those of us who are married know that chemical dance so well, right? Because I mean, you don't even know what's going on, but all of a sudden your husband's like, hey, you know,
so true.
Like looking at you and you're like, what's going on? Like,
so
what are you doing tonight? You know, you want to hang out?
Yeah.
So it's just like this, it's such a biological reality that, you know, it almost like can't be controlled. You know, you can't suppress it. It's just happening. And I think what's so cool is like when you're aware of it, again, that's something you can use to your advantage and to kind of celebrate in your marriage. That intimacy can be like so beautiful at that moment too.
And what I think is super awesome about our body is that the inner workings of our body kind of correspond with our outer workings of our body. Meaning, so again, as estrogen increases, we become more creative. So at work, you know, when you're seeing this mucus, think of your great idea then, because that likely will be what will be produced. But what's so cool is, guess what's happening inside your body? Your body is getting ready to create. Like physically, you're going to ovulate soon. Conception can happen, and you're creative out into the world. You're creative with what you produce, but you're also creative inside. And I think that's so beautiful. Just how the inner workings of our body and our shifting skills and abilities to the world is beautiful to me.
You know, Jamie, I have a question because I don't know if you know anything about this, but you know how women talk about cycle syncing, and like if you in college or, you know, you girls that live together, all of a sudden your cycles start kind of aligning together. But I was thinking about this as you were talking. I'm like, what if there is a genius in that? Like, what if there's a kind of a purpose in cycle syncing, meaning that like women can come together, and if their cycles align, we all have the most creative genius power at the same time.
Masterminding at its finest.
Yeah, like have you ever thought about that before?
Actually, I know a reason why that is the case in terms of what I learned. Not necessarily about like think tanks, although that's awesome though. That's amazing. That's an amazing idea. But the reason why we sync together, because again, that pheromone scent attracts us to others, or to our like to men we're attracted to, but it also attracts us to sisterhood. So if we have genetically similar genotypes, we're going to get into pheromones in a whole other episode. But anyway, that's what gets us synced together is the pheromones.
Right.
Anyway, but the cool thing about that is, guess what? In the olden days, when there wasn't formula, like me and my sister who live on a cul-de-sac, we're going to sync at the same thing. And if we both get pregnant, we both have babies, but one person can't nurse, or if something happens or the mother passes away or whatever the case may be in these villages and in these communities, we're having babies around the same time. And there's babies that we can nurse. And so really it's survival, which I think is such a beautiful, beautiful thing. But I love that idea of like being creative at the same time. That's such a cool thing. So anyway, so we hit this max of like energy, attractiveness, like I call it the tigress phase. And then we ovulate. And then after ovulation becomes like, what's her name? Marie Kondo. Is that her name from Netflix? Who's like the organizer lady who like, then that comes our detail oriented phase.
Yes.
So like our body is preparing for pregnancy. So even though we might not actually be pregnant, our physical body prepares for it. So the uterine lining is nice and thick. If implantation happened or not, our body is craving more of the nurturing environment. So women tend to stay more at home. We want to be close to family. We might not be out as a socialite like we were last week, but now we want to maybe dress in sweatpants, be comfortable, organize a closet. We might get really frustrated and perturbed when things are out of order. And it all has to do with our hormones. So there's this amazing app that I had to have my husband. I'm like, listen, Justin, I need you to download this app, Female Forecaster. Just check it out, people, because it helps him know like libido, sex drive, although he can kind of get a sense of that anyway. But even just like when I might be a little, naggy or nitpicky, and it really is aligned with those hormones. So it's just this beautiful thing. And if you understand it, you can leverage it and you don't need to feel shame. I'm going to say one thing real quick. I think it's super important because I know, Teresa, you're thinking things in your head. I can tell. We're getting to know each other so well. And I'm so glad we can see each other. The podcast listeners hear our voice, but we actually are looking at each other when we're talking.
Yeah.
And again, if you tune into YouTube, you see us, but I can tell, I can tell when you think it's something. But anyway, so I'm going to say one thing and then I want to hear what you have as in your head as thoughts. Okay. One thing I hear a lot from women, they say, I'm just so lazy. Everybody else is better than me and I just don't feel like doing anything and all this stuff. Like basically they just can't get out of their head about the things that they're not motivated to do. But if you look at their cycle, it's very likely that they've ovulated already and they're in a time of rest. Or it could be during their period and they see all these people doing all this stuff, but they're not in that hormone genius phase yet. They might be in their progesterone genius, again, where you're more detailed, want to stay close to friends and family. I call it the mom genes phase where you want to be comfortable. But so there's no shame in that. Don't shame yourself. Women are good at like blanket statement. I'm always this way. And I would say, no, you're not actually. You're that way probably when your progesterone is high, but give yourself a couple weeks because you'll notice that energy. And if you don't experience that may be cause for maybe you're getting sick soon. Maybe there's an underlying condition, like again, with like your thyroid or your hormones. And if you're on hormonal contraception, you aren't probably seeing much of that at all. But the good news is if you do discontinue that and practice maybe a natural way to plan your family, you'll really be able to experience that essence of you, which I think is so exciting. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Oh my gosh, I've got so much in my brain right now, but I want to, because this is the last thing I was thinking about was when you were saying that, like I was thinking about college girls too. I mean, high school, college girls, because obviously, I mean, sometimes Jamie and I are married, so we're talking about it because we're from a married standpoint, but you single ladies, think about when you're in school and you've got all this stress and you're involved in 10,000 activities and then you've got like finals coming up. I mean, just to be aware, I mean, it'd be nice if you could plan all of your exams around your estrogen creativity power, but we can't. I mean, the world doesn't plan themselves around our cycle. So we have to work with it. But at the same time, like you were saying, Jamie, like when you feel like, oh man, I just don't want to study. I just want to lay here, or I just want to organize my closet instead, or whatever. Like having an awareness of where you are in your cycle, at least gives us an ability to say, okay, like this is normal to feel this way.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And maybe I need to like do something to get myself motivated and to study or to do whatever it is I need to do, but to know that I'm not like weird or I'm not a lazy bum just because I feel this way. Okay, so that's first and foremost, like the awareness is key. Awareness is empowerment. And sometimes we can't change these things, but the awareness of it allows us to, again, use it to our advantage then. And I just also was thinking about, I mean, again, my husband, like literally, again, when you ladies, if you are married or when you get married, if your guys, like if they really are in tune to this, I mean, I literally could have ovulated and within hours, my husband will look at my eyes when I come home from work and he's like, I guess you passed ovulation. Because, and it's not a pleasant look, like just like, it wasn't like, oh, you're so pretty. Because what happens is I'm like, oh, there's dishes in the sink and my kitchen is a disaster. And now instead of being like, whatever, I'm so tired, let's just get on with life, I'm like, I'm so annoyed. Why couldn't
Ah,
somebody just do the dishes? Like, I
right.
work all day. So it just affects our mood so much. And women out there who are mothers know this because, and this is called like women kind of PMS, like we have a lot of guilt. Like women
Mm-hmm.
carry a lot of guilt about things. So
Totally.
your kids are home, you're with them in there, they're driving you crazy. Like you can't even handle like your kid touching you on the arm like this. You're about to like explode in your brain because, and I'm one of those people like, stop touching me,
Yeah.
stop touching me. And you're going to explode. Well, it's probably because you are past ovulation and you're in that premenstrual phase and your brain is like, I got to just prepare my body for
Yeah.
pregnancy and my kid is touching me and they spilled their milk and I just want to scream. And maybe you flew off the handle and now you have like mom guilt about it.
Totally.
Do I hear it all the time from women? Yes, absolutely. But I want women to know that it is totally normal to like when you're PMSing to just not handle parenthood very well.
Yep.
And
Totally.
to be more irritable with your husband. But the awareness of that just allows you to be like, okay, maybe I need to take a walk today, maybe
Mm-hmm.
some time alone and prayer or whatever it is, because I know this is one of those days.
Totally. And something else I noticed, like before ovulation, if there's like this, like, you know, my husband's trying to pursue me, it's not as like annoying. I mean, I like, it's good. You like that. But then afterwards, and it makes sense with your body. Like if your body's like, okay, I might be pregnant now, there's no need to have to like reproduce again. It makes sense that you're like,
Right.
hey, right now I need a firming touch and not a rousing touch, a
Mm-hmm.
firming touch, which makes sense because when we're pregnant, we depend more on someone else. We depend more on our husband. We need that protector. So also with progesterone, we tend to be more attracted to our husband when he's being more nurturing to the children. So like maybe we need our space, but we're more attracted to the husband when he's soft and when he's gentle and affirming, rather than at the very beginning of the cycle, we want kind of more of the like, the aggressor almost in a sense, not in
Chop the firewood,
yeah,
man.
like chop the firewood with an axe and flannel,
Yeah.
and
No, and the other part of that is too, also women just know like sex drive, is very variable for women. Like women oftentimes again feel frustrated or guilty because they're like, I just don't feel like it
yeah.
at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
And the biological chemical reality is that the one time that you really might feel like it is when you're ovulating and releasing that egg. That is how we have people on the earth, and we
Yep.
have to have that happen. So, I find that many women are concerned about their sex drive, but remember, empowerment is through awareness of this. So once you ovulate, like Jamie said, your body is telling you there's no reason to do this thing. So it changes the way you feel about it. Not that we still can't have intimacy and enjoy it, but you just need to be aware of that. That's a normal thing,
Yep.
very normal thing,
Yep. And I
and
want
to not feel guilty.
totally, absolutely. It's so important. There's two really big things I want to say here before we close. So, one thing you may be thinking, what you're saying doesn't describe me at all. You might be thinking,
True.
I'm totally introverted and I don't really feel like I ever want to dress up and go somewhere or whatever the case may be. The reality is we all are very different. And so if you instead think of it as a volume knob, so think of every different person as a radio, and you have a volume knob. And I have my own personality and my own tendency. So my own tendency might be like situation A, but situation A, the volume knob is going to increase my energy based on what I normally would just be otherwise. So even though you might be quiet or you're more of a quiet person or more shy, you're going to be less that way when estrogen is high. You don't want to compare yourself to the person who's really out there if your personality just isn't that way. It's a knob, and I like to think of it as volume. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Second thing I wanted to say is in work. Okay, so we just talked about, in relationships, we talked a lot about how our hormones affect the way we act and the way we interact with others. And then we talked a little bit about the brain and how our hormones, like, empathy and the number of words we speak in a day normally is 20,000 and guys are 7,000 a day.
Wow.
being actually more than 20,000 when our estrogen is increasing. Again, a relative average. But also in work, again, if you think about the full cycle, and we know quiet and reflection during the menses. This is kind of like a little recap, but associating it with work. And then as estrogen starts to increase, here's a little diagram. Isn't that fun if you're watching YouTube? Estrogen increases, think of it as coffee, and then it reaches an all-time max. You're super creative, super magnetic. And then again, if you're at work, you're thinking of your great ideas, you're attracting others, and you're buying people into this idea, right? And then as progesterone takes over, your progesterone genius, guess what? You thought of all these ideas? Now you got to get them done. So now you're thinking about all the details and the things that need to be accomplished. So for me personally, I love to be creative, but I also like to get stuff done. And if I'm not thinking about where I am in my cycle and I'm post ovulation, but I want to have a great idea, it likely isn't going to happen for me personally. I'm going to wait a couple weeks and then think, okay, this is when I'm going to get my dream journal out. This is when I'm going to get my vision board out. This is when I'm going to think of my grand idea. I don't want to force it. I can leverage what comes naturally. And so that's another superpower, feminine superpower or hormone genius. This like totally ties into just beyond fertility. So I wanted to say that, Teresa, before I forgot, because it's
that is awesome, Jamie. And that is so cool. Like, I feel like now we almost as working together, like I should be like, hey, Jamie, where are you in your cycle?
I know.
What should we be working on? Because like right now I'm just in the middle of my post ovulation phase, my height of progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm feeling good. I have good energy and stuff like that. But right now I'm struggling with the fact that my house is completely disorganized. So I'm struggling with that. But I mean, it's just so cool. Like we can have this information. I just think so many and again, I just want to like think about those younger women because, you know, we're older and I want younger women to be like, wow, I want to know this. I want to,
Totally.
you know, understand my body better and understand these hormones. You know, progesterone and estrogen both work in the brain. You know, we have receptor sites for these hormones in our brain, which is like so incredibly cool because it's affecting everything. And this is why when you're on birth control, your hormones are like this. It's like a flat line, right? And it's kind of telling your brain you're pregnant. So you're not getting this increase in estrogen, that natural estrogen, and it's not allowing for that. And they, you know, not to say like, again, this is all just information. Like we want you to do what's best for your bodies, but to have that profound understanding that you didn't have before about hormones allows you to make the best decision for you.
Totally. And even in your romantic lives, you know, like your natural hormones literally communicate with your partners in terms of like the chemical dance, but that isn't necessarily happening if we're shutting that system down in the body. So yeah, there's this whole kind of different experience we can have with our true blue body, our fully alive body, our authentic body. And again, our goal here, Teresa and I, our goal is just to educate you. Like, did you know? I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone.
Right.
So this is us just sharing it because we're not really choosing if we're not being given all of our options.
Exactly.
It's not actually a choice at all. So we are just sharing this information with you and in hopes that now you know it and you didn't know it before. And I know Teresa and I, you know, we love to partner alongside to make that very clear. But we would love to hear your thoughts. If you have questions, please reach out to us and please stay tuned to our episodes upcoming because I'm pretty sure they're going to blow your mind. They're going to be so amazing. You're going to be so empowered by understanding your feminine genius and your hormone genius.
Awesome, Jamie. And I want to remind our listeners, please like, share with others the Hormone Genius podcast. Be a follower of our Instagram page, like our Facebook page, follow us on Facebook. We have an email address, which is what, Jamie?
The hormonegenius@gmail.com.
The hormonegenius@gmail.com. Email us your questions, correspond with us. We want to hear your stories. Maybe you learned something today. Maybe you want to give us some insights we didn't know. Share with us and subscribe and like our YouTube channel so you can see our faces. And we want to enjoy, you know, our listeners as much as we enjoy doing this.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.